I thought that accident was proof of his love, but right there in the hospital bed, I realized he hadn't risked his life for me, but to protect his mistress. I'm Olivia, and this is my story. Have you ever gone through a betrayal that shocking? Share it so I know I'm not the only one. Pain, endless pain, swallowing me whole, every inch of my body screaming in silence, even blinking making my eyelids feel as heavy as lead. In my head, the image of the black SUV still echoed, rushing straight at me, tires screeching on the wet road, and then the horrific crash, like the world collapsing. My chest swelled with a terror so sharp it felt like ice. Before I could open my eyes, a familiar voice slipped into my ears. The voice of my husband, Christopher Cole, and his assistant. They clearly hadn't expected me to wake up, so they didn't lower their voices at all, their words echoing clearly in the cold hospital room. "It's handled. How's Hannah?" Christopher's voice cut through, cold and decisive the way he sounded when giving orders in business meetings. I stayed still, trying not to move, my breath faint under the bandages wrapped around my chest. His assistant, a middle-aged man, whose voice was always careful, replied, "Mr. Cole, rest assured, everything was done as you asked. All the cameras along the road and the car's route have been completely hacked. It's just, isn't this a bit unfair to Miss Olivia?" My heart clenched, like an invisible hand squeezing tight. Unfair? That was the word he used to describe covering up an accident, no, an assassination, that Hannah, Christopher's first love, had caused to me. Christopher's voice didn't change at all, still as cold as an iceberg. "Olivia isn't dead. Hannah's reputation matters more." He paused for a second, as if weighing it, then went on. "I believe Hannah didn't mean to hit Olivia with the car. It was all just an accident." Accident? I wanted to scream, but the pain in my body wouldn't let me. My thoughts spun like a storm. Hannah had been driving an SUV that had been modified and thoroughly checked for safety. She'd sped straight at me without braking, even accelerating. That was an accident? And Christopher, my husband, the man who was supposed to stand with me at the altar, was now standing there ordering a system hack to protect her. I was the victim, yet in his eyes, my life was worth less than Hannah's reputation. Hannah. Her name had always hovered over our lives like a ghost. Christopher's first love, the woman he adored in college, but who he said left him for someone richer. I knew of her from bits of stories, old photos he still kept on his phone. "She's just the past," he had once reassured me, holding me tight in the middle of the night. But now that past was alive again, and it was killing my present. The assistant kept reporting, his voice hesitant. "Ms. Olivia just came out of surgery. She's still not out of danger. The doctor said she needs to be watched for 24 hours. If she doesn't wake up, she might end up in a vegetative state." He stopped, as if afraid saying it out loud would make Christopher angry. "Also, during monitoring, there's still a risk to her life. Surgery might be needed at any time. Surgery requires your power of attorney." I felt my whole body go cold, like falling into a deep ice pit. Christopher's voice stayed calm, not a flicker of emotion. "Hannah is more important. If anything happens to Olivia, call me, that was all. No worry, no pain, just a cold directive like when he fired an employee." In that moment, my heart felt ripped apart, the pain so tight it choked me. I clenched my hand under the thin blanket, nails digging into my own skin to hold back the urge to rise up, grab his collar and scream, "Why? Why are you treating me like this?" But I lay still, listening to their footsteps leaving, the hospital room falling back into a suffocating silence. A single tear rolled from the corner of my eye, hot against my chilled skin. My consciousness drifted, physical and emotional pain blending into one, pulling me back into darkness. If I survived, how would I face him? When I woke up again, the warmth of someone's hand holding mine spread through my cold skin, like a faint current pulling me out of the darkness of unconsciousness. I slowly opened my eyes, blurred vision sharpening under the dim white light of the hospital room. Christopher was leaning against the edge of the bed, head bowed slightly, his long, familiar fingers laced into mine, gripping tight as if letting go would make me vanish. His face, shadowed by dark circles and unshaven stubble, looked exhausted, but filled with worry. When he saw me open my eyes, his blue eyes lit up as if ignited by sudden hope. His lips curving into that familiar gentle smile, his warm voice rising. "Honey, you're awake." He leaned closer, his other hand brushing my cheek, thumb gliding lightly as if wiping away an invisible drop of sweat. "You don't know how worried I've been." "Do you feel any discomfort? I'll call the doctor right now." His voice trembled slightly at the end, as if trying to contain an overflow of emotion, and he stood quickly, moving toward the door with the urgency of a devoted husband. His behavior was no different from before, gentle, caring, as if I were the center of his universe. If I hadn't overheard that cold conversation last night, I would have believed he truly loved me deeply. But now, every gesture of his only felt staged, like a play performed flawlessly. Inside me, anger smoldered, but I lowered my gaze, hiding the chill in my eyes, knowing this wasn't the time to expose him. I needed time to think, to plan. I shook my head slightly, my voice soft like honey, steady despite the dryness in my throat. "You've been here all night?" "You must be exhausted," I paused. "Go rest. Staying up all night like this, it breaks my heart." He smiled tenderly, showing his straight white teeth, then sat back down by the bed, still gripping my hand, as if he couldn't let go. Casually, he asked, voice light but laced with probing, "Baby, do you remember what caused the accident?" His eyes locked on mine, waiting, and I felt his grip tighten a little, tense for my answer. I frowned, pretending to think, eyelids narrowing as if struggling to piece together hazy memories. "The car came too fast," I said slowly, weakly. I blacked out before I could react. Watching him through lowered lashes, I saw his shoulders relax, a faint breath of relief, his smile returning. He squeezed my hand tighter, soothing. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." His voice was steady, confident, like the CEO handling a business crisis. "I'll make sure the police investigate thoroughly. We won't let that person get away." Hearing that, my heart froze further, like doused with ice water. Investigate thoroughly? He had already wiped every trace clean, the surveillance systems hacked long ago by the tech company he ran. If I hadn't overheard that conversation, I'd still be fooled, still believing he was my solid anchor. All that warmth and love before, the embraces, the passionate kisses, the promises of forever, nothing but lies. The corner of my lips curled into a bitter smile, quickly hidden by a faint cough, feigning fatigue. I only murmured a dull, my voice flat. Christopher didn't notice, too absorbed in his own words, soothing me with a few more reassurances before calling the doctor, waiting a few minutes with impatience, then hurrying out, his tall frame disappearing beyond the door with hurried steps. Watching his retreating back, I felt both familiar and estranged. Familiar from all the times he had left like this, estranged now that I knew the real reason behind it. My eyes welled up, but I refused to let tears fall for this man again. I lifted my gaze to the pale ceiling, tiny cracks spreading like spiderwebs, bitterness burning inside like acid. In that moment, I remembered the oddities I'd brushed aside before, pieces of a puzzle I had ignored out of blind love. Those romantic dates, when he suddenly left midway, phone buzzing, apologizing with a guilty smile. "Urgent work, honey, I have to go." I believed him then, thinking it was pressure from his company, from the weight of being CEO. I even comforted him, held him, said, "I understand, stay strong." Looking back now, those calls were likely Hannah's, their entanglement going on long behind my back. I had been foolish, ignoring the hurriedly deleted texts, the long business trips, the faint scent of strange perfume on his shirts. Too afraid to dig deeper, terrified of shattering our fragile happiness. And now, here I was, broken body and shattered heart, The doctor walked in, his middle-aged face carrying a professional smile, checking my wounds with practiced, gentle movements. "You're awake, good. We'll keep monitoring you further." After the doctor finished examining me, an orderly pushed my wheelchair out for tests. She was a middle-aged woman with cold eyes and a hurried stride, not even glancing at me once. She pushed the chair as if running an errand, her rough hands gripping the handles, muttering something about her night shift. I bit my lip, keeping silent, each turn of the wheels across the cold hospital floor stretching my isolation further. After the CT scan, they wheeled me out of the machine room, the harsh white light of the hallway stabbing my eyes so I had to squint. The orderly had vanished without a word, leaving me there, helpless in an empty corridor, no one paying attention. I gripped the armrest of the wheelchair tight, using the last of my strength to push myself back to my room. Just as I neared the door, I caught a familiar voice, the low tone of Christopher's assistant mixed with the fawning tone of the same orderly who'd abandoned me. I froze, heart hammering, hands trembling, as I held the wheels still to keep from making a sound. Through the cracked door, I could hear every word, each one like a blade cutting into my heart. "What I've arranged for you, make sure you do it cleanly," the assistant said, voice like steel. "Once it's done, I'll get you out of the country, absolute safety guaranteed." The orderly's reply was greedy. "Don't worry. Isn't it just giving some cripple a shot? I'll do it right." She paused, lowering her voice like she was bargaining. "But you promised me $1 million after it's done." "Don't go back on your word." I felt my blood turn to ice, breath choking in my throat. "Poison? Cripple?" They were talking about me. The assistant's voice came again, this time over the phone, tense and cautious. "Mr. Cole, everything's arranged. It's just, do we really have to leave Ms. Olivia crippled? And she just got out of danger. I'm afraid if I slip, it'll be murder." On the other end, Christopher's voice roared. I couldn't catch every word, but the fury in it made the assistant rush to answer. All right. I'll finish it properly. Won't let Olivia have a chance to stand again." Those words crashed down on me like a sledgehammer, making everything spin. I trembled outside the door, fingers digging into the wall to stay upright. Silent tears burned down my cold cheeks, but I clenched my teeth, refusing to let a sob escape. Looking down at my phone, the recording app was still running. The horrifying conversation had been captured. Afraid of being caught, I bit my lip and used all my strength to roll the wheelchair back, each turn a stab of pain. I slipped into the stairwell at the end of the hall, where the weak flicker of the fluorescent light matched my heartbeat. Weak, but still beating. Hands shaking, I opened my phone, hastily contacting my best friend Natalie Shaw, asking her to arrange a transfer and find me a new caregiver. I couldn't move easily. I needed someone trustworthy to look after me. If I stayed in this hospital under Christopher's eye, I might not even keep my life. Natalie replied almost instantly, her voice message filled with panic and anger. "Olivia, I'm on my way. Christopher is shameless, bullying you like this. If your parents were alive, he'd never dare." Hearing her voice eased the tightness in my chest, like a flash of light in the dark. Natalie had always been quick to act, and I knew she wouldn't leave me alone to face this nightmare. Under her arrangements, everything moved fast. Within an hour, a private ambulance from Shaw Medical Group, her family's healthcare company, came to pick me up. I was moved into a room at their private clinic. Natalie stood by my bed, holding my hand, her eyes red as she looked at my bandaged body. "You're going to be okay, Olivia," she said, her voice trembling. "He can't reach you here." "I'll protect you." Does this story make your heart pound? If you're boiling over Christopher's betrayal, like and comment the moment that made you angriest. Subscribe and hit the bell to follow Olivia's revenge in the next part. Lying in the new hospital bed, I looked out the window where sunlight poured through green leaves, so different from the stifling air of the old hospital. I thought back to it all. Christopher and Hannah must have believed I was alone, unprotected, so they could act however they pleased. Worse and worse, more ruthless each time. Could Christopher really not know how vast Hayes Enterprises is? 2 years ago, after my parents died in that horrific accident, it was me alone, just 24 years old, who carried the weight of that empire. I sat in boardrooms with business tycoons, pen in hand, signing billion-dollar contracts, eyes meeting theirs without a tremor. How could anyone think I'm easy to bully? My phone rang again and again, the ringtone shrill like an alarm, cutting off then starting over, the screen flashing in the quiet room. I glanced at it. It was, of course, Christopher. I drew a deep breath, steadying myself, and answered. His voice burst out immediately, rushed and full of worry. "Olivia, where are you? Why aren't you in your hospital room? You're still weak. You can't be running around." His pitch was higher than usual, as if trying to mask panic. "Sweetheart, tell me the address. I'll come get you right now." Don't get yourself hurt worse. Hearing him sound as if he truly cared, warm and tender like the whispers he used to breathe into my ear at night, almost made me flinch. But I didn't forget. The man who valued his mistress's reputation over my life was him. The man who wanted me crippled, never to stand again, was him. My heart trembled, still raw with the acid burn of betrayal. I inhaled, kept my voice cold, asked back, "Do you really care about me?" The words slipped out with a slight quiver, quickly hidden by a bitter laugh inside. Was it me he cared about, or his secrets staying buried? On the other end, he must have sensed something, his voice probing, hesitant. "Baby, what's wrong? How could I not care about you?" Then he continued, serious now, like a man negotiating a deal. "These days, I've been in constant contact with the doctors, just wishing you'd recover soon. Then we'll redo the wedding, a truly grand ceremony." "Fine, let's do another wedding." I want it big. The bigger it was, the better my plan would work. My voice was gentle, but in my head, a vision of a lavish wedding rose. Crowds of guests, flashing cameras, and Hannah, her jealous eyes unable to stay still. Christopher kept pressing, asking where I was, his voice growing more anxious as if afraid to lose my trail. Knowing he'd find out sooner or later, I softened my tone, feigned fatigue. "I'm at a private clinic of Shaw Medical Group. Natalie's here, don't worry." He knew Natalie, my childhood friend, heiress to Shaw Medical Group, so he said no more, only promised the most luxurious wedding for me, his voice brimming with confidence. "I'll make you the happiest bride in the world, Olivia." I promise. Hanging up, I looked at Natalie sitting beside the bed. Her face drawn with worry, her big brown eyes full of concern. I told her my plan. Hearing it, Natalie shot to her feet, hands flying, her voice high. "No! It's too dangerous!" She paced back and forth, her long hair loose, her face flushed with anger and fear. "Olivia, don't risk this!" I met her eyes, my voice steady. "Listen to me." Seeing she couldn't sway me, she finally calmed, sat back down and gripped my hand tighter. "All right. But I'm staying with you. I won't let you be alone." The union between Hayes Enterprises and Coal Corp had been set 3 years ago. All of Seattle knew. A perfect business alliance, praised by the press as the wedding of the century. Since then, I'd assumed Christopher was my future, believed in his gentle gestures, the surprise bouquets, the private flights to Paris, the whispered words of love. But I hadn't known all that tenderness was fake. He had never let go of his first love. Hannah Hart, the blonde with the seductive smile who'd left him for money, but had now returned to destroy. Out of jealousy, Hannah rammed her car into me. This next wedding had to be grander than the last. High society guests, imported flowers, media coverage everywhere. She would surely strike again. This time, I would walk into the trap myself and lead them into it. The moment they acted, I would make them pay for life. Not with violence, but with the law, with evidence, with the collapse of the empire they built on lies. The new wedding was set for a month later. To make sure the plan went smoothly, I used the media early, pushing the hype to its peak with articles about the extravagant ring, the costly gown, and a guest list that included nearly the entire Seattle elite. On the day itself, I put on my makeup and slipped into the haute couture wedding dress flown in from Paris. Every seam hugged my body like it had been tailored to my skin, glittering like starlight, as if it had been woven from a dream. On my hand, the $100 million wedding ring glimmered under the lights, perfectly cut diamonds scattering the glow into cold, sharp beams. I brushed my carefully styled hair, my red lips curving into a discreet smile. Today, Seattle would witness a grand wedding, and the climax of a play I had directed myself as I rode toward the hotel hosting the event. Half an hour later, the Grand Regency Hotel overflowed with light from massive crystal chandeliers, the sound of violins rising and weaving into the lively chatter of guests, when a figure burst in, cutting off the music and laughter. It was Christopher's assistant, face pale, sweat beading on his forehead, voice panicked. "Mr. Cole, something's happened!" He panted, gripping his phone. "Ms. Olivia's car exploded, then plunged into the river. It's still underwater." The ballroom erupted into chaos, horrified screams mixing with the sound of glass shattering as someone dropped their drink. Christopher stood frozen, the champagne glass in his hand tilting, golden liquid spilling onto the floor. His eyes hollow like his soul had been ripped out. News spread like wildfire. The lavish wedding shocking Seattle now exploding with a new accident. On X, hashtags shot up the trending list. Olivia Hayes, accident, Seattle wedding disaster. People dug up the crash from over a month ago, speculating about dark conspiracies. They retrieved the car, a charred, twisted heap of metal. But not my body. Social media boiled over. She must have died in the explosion, her corpse swept away by the current. No one knew that at that moment, I was reclining on a sofa in my private villa, calmly scrolling through the breaking news on my tablet. I set the tablet down, fingers gliding over the screen, then picked up my phone to call the legal team of Hayes Enterprises. The man on the other end spoke in a steady, professional voice. "CEO Hayes, everything's in place. All videos and evidence have been collected, witnesses secured. Legal and PR are standing by for your signal." I nodded, even though he couldn't see, the corner of my mouth lifting in a cold smile. "Good," I said, my tone calm but sharp as a blade. "Keep everything quiet until I give the word." Hanging up, I sipped hot mint tea, its cool scent spreading across my tongue, a soft contrast to the storm rising inside me. The most satisfying game is when the prey thinks it's escaped, only to realize it's in the trap, thrashing in despair. I opened my phone and sent Christopher and Hannah the surveillance video. Hannah secretly hiring someone to plant a bomb under my Rolls-Royce. The man, an explosives expert, worked fast, attaching the device with practiced hands as if he'd done it hundreds of times. Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang nonstop, their names flashing on the screen, calls coming one after another. I smiled, sliding my finger to block them both without hesitation. Right after, Natalie called, her voice urgent over the speaker. "Olivia, are you okay?" I tilted my chin, looking out the window at the moonlight on the villa's still lake, smiling. "Everything's going perfectly." Natalie laughed, her voice brimming with excitement. "God, Olivia, this shed-skin move of yours is brilliant. Should have taken those two down long ago." I laughed softly, answered a few words, then ended the call. This time, Hannah hadn't been stupid enough to appear in person, but her methods were more vicious than ever, planting a bomb in my car to force my death in the explosion. But I'd stayed one step ahead. I'd gotten into the Rolls-Royce, let everyone see me, the radiant bride. But just before the car was sabotaged, I'd secretly switched to my security team's vehicle, watching from a distance as the car exploded and plunged into the river. In my hands, I held not just the surveillance video, but also the hospital recordings. The assistant and the nurse talking about poison, Christopher ordering they leave me no chance to stand again. I had a witness. The explosives expert, captured by Hayes Enterprises security right after planting the bomb. I had evidence. The emails between Hannah and the man, pulled from the secret server my IT team had hacked. Everything was ready to drag Christopher and Hannah into the light, and I would give them plenty of time to regret it behind bars. The next morning, I walked down the polished wooden staircase of the villa, the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee mixing with toasted bread drifting from the kitchen. Henry, the butler, stood waiting at the bottom, black suit pressed sharp, his voice steady and deep. "Ms. Olivia, Christopher Cole has been standing outside the gates all night." I froze, fingers lightly resting on the railing, eyes drifting toward the tall window. Outside, snow was falling softly, delicate flakes swirling in the icy Seattle air where the temperature barely hovered above freezing. In this weather, standing out all night, his limbs must have been numb. I gave a faint smile, said nothing, and moved into the dining room where the table had already been laid with fresh flowers and white silk napkins. I sat down leisurely, sipping hot coffee, the faint bitterness spreading through my mouth, soothing the dull ache of wounds not fully healed. I sliced into the bread, golden butter melting under the knife, while my mind ran through the next steps. Only after finishing did I rise, pulling on a long fur coat and stepping through the front doors. Beyond the iron gates, I saw Christopher in the distance, huddled under the eaves, his black coat soaked and clinging to his body, hands clutching a thermos as if it were the last treasure he owned. When he saw me, he immediately stepped toward the fence, voice hoarse. "Olivia!" His breath came in clouds of white against the cold air. "Are you all right? Thank God you're safe. I worried about you all night." His eyes lit up, but I only looked at him blankly, my gaze brushing past his disheveled figure, a man who once embodied perfect success, now standing like a failure, trembling in the wind. He held out the thermos, his weak smile pleading, "I made you clam chowder, your favorite." At the sight of it, I stiffened, my heart pricking like pierced by a needle. Memories rushed back painfully clear. The nights I worked late at Hayes Enterprises, skipping dinner, stomach twisting at midnight. Then, Christopher would quietly enter the kitchen, carefully cooking clam chowder, the scent of seafood filling our small apartment. He'd bring me the steaming bowl, setting it in front of me. Back then, I was touched. I believed that beyond my parents, he was the one who cared for me most. But now, seeing that soup in his hands, I only saw a prop, part of a performance he staged to salvage what he'd broken. "Sweetie?" His trembling voice pulled me from the memory. I looked up, my eyes growing colder. No warmth left. He stepped closer, wet shoes leaving prints in the snow, his voice gentle, coaxing. "Sweetie, let's go register our marriage. Didn't you always want to be with me forever?" He paused, eyes brightening like he'd found an escape. "I've already booked the appointment. Let's register. Once it's done, we'll be husband and wife. I can stay by your side forever." I frowned slightly, staring at the man before me, a stranger. He was right. Once I had dreamed of marriage with him, begged him to register with me. Every time I brought it up, he'd hide behind excuses of work, say love mattered more than paper, that we didn't need it yet. And I believed, because I wanted to care for him, hold on to our fragile happiness. But now, after Hannah's schemes and his betrayal, Christopher suddenly bringing up marriage felt like a desperate ploy. I looked straight into his eyes, my voice flat. "If you're done, I'll be going inside." I turned, coat brushing lightly over the snow. "Don't go!" Christopher shouted, lunging to grab me, but my bodyguard stepped forward instantly, blocking him like a steel wall. He stood frozen, shame and helplessness carved into his weary face. Lowering his eyes, his voice pleading, "Olivia, can you delete that video?" My steps halted, the corner of my mouth curving in a cold laugh, echoing through the frozen air. So, the clam chowder, the proposal, it was all just a desperate bargain to protect Hannah. I never imagined Christopher, the proud man once standing at the top of power, would bow before me, begging for another woman. I turned, eyes sharp as ice. "What video?" "Olivia Hayes," he roared, panic and rage staining his face red. You know what I mean. Delete it. If it ever leaks, Hannah's reputation will be destroyed. I stood still, gaze unmoving, voice dripping with mockery. Yes, I almost lost my life. And Hannah, she almost lost her reputation. My words cut him, his face shifting from fury to despair, his blue eyes now dull, as if seeing for the first time that I was no longer the Olivia he once knew. Coldly, I said, "Get out. Don't ever appear in front of me again." With that, I turned back toward the house, snow crunching under my heels. My guards moved in, pushing Christopher away, his body staggering against the snow, powerless. The man who had stood in the freezing night, who once made me soup, was now nothing more than a broken shadow, forced to watch me walk away. Perhaps he wondered, how could the girl who once ran behind him, eyes only for him, now be this cold, this merciless? But he didn't know. The girl he remembered had died in that crash, and the Olivia standing here was reborn, sharp, unyielding, and ready to crush her enemies. The wounds from the previous accident had almost fully healed. I only needed to visit the hospital once more for the doctor to confirm there were no lasting effects. The next morning, on the day of my follow-up, I arrived at the hospital on time. After the checkup, holding the report in my hands, my recovery looked good. Remembering the doctor's instructions carefully, I left the examination room and stood waiting for the elevator. I caught whispers from two nurses not far away, their voices full of curiosity. "That girl seems to be Hannah Hart. The guy who brought her in is really handsome." The other nurse replied, her voice lower. "Yeah, I heard when they brought her in, she was unconscious, lost so much blood. A little later, and she wouldn't have made it." My heart jolted, the name Hannah stabbing into my memory like a knife. I glanced down the hallway, forcing myself to appear calm, my eyes drifting toward the billing counter in the distance. Christopher was there, tall in a dark gray overcoat, holding a payment slip, the weariness on his face softening the coldness I was used to. He stood out among the crowd, like a lost star in the hospital corridor, hair slightly messy, dark circles deep under his eyes, yet still carrying that magnetic pull. Back then, it was this very face, that charming smile, and those deep blue eyes, that made me fall at first sight and agree to the merger between Hayes Enterprises and Cole Corporation. Christopher noticed my gaze, turned, and his eyes lit up as if finding a way out. He strode quickly toward me, his voice urgent. "Olivia!" I stopped, looking at him, my eyes ice cold. He lowered his eyes, his voice low. "Hannah was moved out of the emergency room last night." He paused, as if weighing his words, then continued. "Delete the video. It's hurting her too much. If I hadn't found her in time last night, she might have died." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "Can you forgive her?" Hannah knows she was wrong. I stared at him coldly, the corner of my mouth lifting. "Move!" Christopher froze, disbelief in his eyes. "Olivia? You've changed. You used to be so kind." At that I laughed. Kind? That kindness nearly got me killed by them. That video was proof Hannah hired someone to plant a bomb, proof she tried to kill me, and now she staged a suicide attempt to manipulate me. If she truly wanted to die, why let someone save her? If she knew she was wrong, why not come apologize instead of using tricks to control? My gaze turned to ice, my voice dropped, each word like a nail in the air. "Don't block my way." I walked past him, ignoring the disappointment in his eyes and the hand reaching to hold me back. Leaving the hospital, the cold wind blew past, carrying the scent of snow lingering from the night before. My phone buzzed, a message from Natalie flashing on the screen. "Olivia, check what's trending on X." I opened X and instantly saw Hannah's Instagram stories post, allegedly a suicide note spreading like wildfire. In it, she implied I had bullied, pressured, stolen her fiancé, driving her to the edge where she made a mistake. A friend of hers even posted a photo of her lying in a hospital bed, bandages wrapped around her wrists, face pale, as if to make the whole world pity her. Social media erupted, comments cursing me like a tsunami. I exited X, opened my contacts, and called my assistant. His voice came on steady and professional. "Miss Hayes?" I inhaled deeply, my voice like steel. "You can start phase 2 of the plan." He replied immediately, "Yes." I hung up, leaning my head back against the seat, staring out the window at Seattle swallowed in fog. Hannah thought she could use tears and tricks to turn the tables, but she had underestimated me. This game, I would be the one to end it. That evening, the news that Hayes Enterprises and Coal Corp had canceled their engagement exploded across every headline, dominating major outlets. My phone vibrated nonstop, the screen lighting up with calls and messages from Christopher, new numbers, new emails, even new social media accounts. But I didn't open a single one, just coldly blocked each attempt. The next morning, I drove to a flower shop. I chose a bouquet of pure white lilies. My destination was Green Hills Cemetery, where my parents rested, where I sought a sliver of peace amid the storm. Standing before their gravestone, I gently laid the lilies against the stone, the white petals stark against the lush green grass. Their portraits on the granite smiled at me with the same kindness, as if still alive, as if listening. The wind swept through, sharp with cold, and the sky grew heavy, faint snow drifting down to cling to my coat. I hadn't brought an umbrella, just stood there softly, telling them everything that had happened. "Christopher." I paused, exhaling, my breath a pale cloud. "He's not a good husband." We've parted ways. I tilted my head back toward the gray sky. "The snow's coming down harder now. I'll visit again next time," I whispered, my voice breaking, not from cold, but from the old ache resurfacing. Then I turned, walking out of the cemetery, my boots sinking into fresh snow, leaving faint, fading prints. Just as I reached the gates, I froze. Christopher was there, tall in a black coat, holding a black umbrella against the snow. He stepped forward, lifting it above me, shielding me from the falling flakes. The wind had tousled his hair, strands sticking to his pale cheeks, his blue eyes fixed on me, deep yet unreadable. That face, once enough to make my heart race, now only stirred distance and sorrow. He pressed his lips together, silent for a long moment, as if wrestling for words. I met his gaze, saying nothing, though inside my thoughts churned. I wanted to scream, to demand, "When you chose Hannah, did you think of me even once?" But I held back, waiting. His hoarse voice broke the silence. "You must have seen it, the suicide post Hannah put up." The last string inside me snapped. Detached, laced with bitter irony, I thought. Of course, the first name is still Hannah Hart. If not for her, he wouldn't be here at all. "Didn't see it," I replied, my voice like ice, my eyes unmoved. Christopher blurted, panicked, "Impossible." He reached out to touch me, but I stepped back, avoiding him like a burn. He froze, his hand dropping, voice pleading. "Olivia, please! Let Hannah go. You'll really drive her to death." He paused, eyes flicking to the cemetery behind me, his tone flat. "Your parents wouldn't want to see you become so cold." Rage flared inside me, burning hot through my chest. I lifted my head, eyes sharp as steel, my voice dropping like a blade. "The one least worthy of speaking of my parents is you. Don't forget how they died, that year. My parents had been in Christopher's Mercedes S, the one he usually drove. That accident wasn't random. The target was his car, the killers thinking he was inside. But that day, Christopher had let my parents borrow it to go to the airport. They took the fate meant for him. Back then, I tried to tell myself it wasn't directly his fault, but now I couldn't hold back my hatred. Hatred for the lies. Hatred for his indifference. Christopher stood stunned, his face drained, eyes blank as if struck. I gave him one last cold glance, then walked on, my boots crunching through the snow. I slid into the Bentley, the door slamming shut, and the driver pulled away, leaving Christopher alone in the thickening storm. Through the rearview mirror, I watched his figure blur, fading into the snowfall. Hannah was arrested just hours after Phase 2 of the plan was activated, police storming into her house with a warrant, her face turning pale as the cuffs clicked onto her wrists. The evidence was overwhelming, enough for the court to quickly sentence her to 10 years in prison for attempted murder. The news spread like wildfire across social media. With Hayes Enterprises' PR team pulling the strings, every headline exploded, pushed out at terrifying speed, and public opinion flipped in the blink of an eye. Posts went viral like a virus. Shocking! Hannah Hart was the one who tried to kill, with thousands of shares. Another read, CEO Olivia is too tragic, betrayed by her fiancé and targeted by his mistress, alongside a photo of me after the crash, my face bandaged but my eyes fierce. And then, Hannah Hart got what she deserved. 10 years is too light, with comments raging, from sympathy for me to fury at her. I sat before my computer, scrolling through the feed, a cold smile spreading across my lips as I watched the reversal. Once the victim turned into the villain, Hannah was now abandoned by the world. With Hannah in prison, Christopher, the one who had been her support, was left powerless, struggling even to save himself. I filed a tax evasion complaint against Cole Corp with the Revenue Department, and within days, authorities stormed his office, dragging him away in cuffs under the stunned eyes of his employees. Just when it seemed everything was finally coming to an end, I got a call from my assistant, her voice hesitant. "Miss Hayes, Hannah is insisting on seeing you." My brows furrowed, fingers tapping lightly against the polished wooden desk, my voice cool. "I'm not meeting her," my assistant continued, softer now. "But she said if you don't come, you'll regret it. She claims she knows a secret about your parents." My expression froze, my heart thudding hard once, lingering in silence for a few seconds, eyes drifting toward the framed photo of my parents on the desk. "All right, I'll go," I said at last, my tone steady but edged with doubt. Hanging up, I leaned back into the sofa, tilting my head toward the ceiling. Could it be that the accident years ago held another hidden truth? I had once investigated everything, left nothing unchecked, and yet now Hannah was using this card to drag me in. Unable to untangle it, I shut my eyes, letting sleep claim me on the sofa. The prison sat on the outskirts of Seattle. I lowered myself onto the hard plastic chair, staring coldly through the thick glass at the woman opposite me, Hannah Hart, no longer hidden behind layers of heavy makeup and the waist-length curls that once made her look like a goddess. Now she wore a gray inmate uniform, her hair tied back at the nape of her neck, her face pale to the point I almost didn't recognize her. Hannah looked at me, the corner of her lips lifting in a faint smile, before she suddenly burst into a crazed laugh. "Olivia, do you know why I'm laughing?" Her shrill voice pierced the air, her eyes flashing with manic glee. I stayed silent, watching her, my hands tightening slightly under the table to keep steady. "I'm laughing because you're pathetic, truly pathetic," she went on, laughing so hard tears streamed down her face. Then she stopped abruptly, looking at me with mocking disdain. "Olivia, you think you're so smart, don't you? Do you even know? Back then, when Christopher learned someone was planning to ram his car, he deliberately let your parents take his place. He wanted them to die for him." The words drained the blood from my face, my heart clenching, like it was being strangled. But she didn't stop, her voice growing more triumphant. "From the very beginning, Christopher never planned to marry into the Hayes family. All he ever wanted was to swallow Hayes Enterprises whole." She laughed like a madwoman, eyes locked on mine, savoring every flicker of pain she thought she saw. I only tightened my fingers, my face calm, my gaze like ice. "So now you've turned on each other, is that it?" I said. My composure caught her off guard, and she slammed her hands against the table, fury twisting her face. "Why? Why were you born with everything I've ever wanted? Why do you get it all without lifting a finger while I have nothing? The Cole family looked down on me, Christopher too. He said he loved me, but still turned to marry you. Why? What do you have that I don't? I looked straight into her eyes. You hate me? Then save your strength. When you get out, keep on hating if you still have the energy left. 10 years is a long time. The room fell silent, except for Hannah's ragged breathing. Then she lowered her head, shoulders trembling, before breaking into sobs, tears rolling down her cheeks as her voice cracked. Olivia, I'm sorry. I froze for a moment, unsure if it was real or just another act. But in the end, she had said the words. I gave her one last look before turning and walking away. Turning over her words in my mind, I picked up my phone and called my assistant. No matter what, I would never forgive Christopher. I wanted him locked away for life. With a clear lead, everything was easier. Over the years, he had committed plenty of crimes: market manipulation, bribery of officials, even covering up evidence from the crash that killed my parents. The evidence was all collected, and through my lawyers, I dragged him into court. For causing my parents' deaths, conspiring in the attempt on my life, tax evasion, bribery. 2 years later, at federal court, Christopher was sentenced to life in prison. He stood there, gaunt, his prison uniform replacing the expensive tuxedos he once wore, his eyes vacant as the sentence was read. Another year passed, and I found myself once more in a prison visiting room, the same cold air heavy around me, staring at Christopher through the glass. He was withered, his hair prematurely gray, the once handsome face now deeply lined. He looked at me, voice ragged with pain. Olivia, back then, I regret it. I admit at first, I used you and Hayes Enterprises, but I never expected that I'd actually fall in love with you. He gave a bitter laugh, his voice hoarse. But in the end, greed blinded me. Stripped of freedom, stripped of power, only then did he claim to see his heart clearly. But I felt nothing, my gaze steady, untouched. Did you really love me? I asked. He looked at me, desperate, pleading. I'm sorry, Olivia Hayes, but I love you. I shook my head, my voice sharp as steel. No, you've never loved anyone. The only person you've ever loved is yourself. Without a second thought, I turned and walked away, leaving him behind the glass, a solitary figure fading into the silence of prison walls. 3 years passed like a calm river, carrying away the fragments of the past, leaving within me a quiet peace where the wounds had healed into scars that became stronger lines on the path of my life. The Cole family crumbled little by little, each brick of power collapsing under the weight of accumulated mistakes. And I, Olivia Hayes, now sat in the vast office on the top floor of Hayes Enterprises, a final contract waiting on the desk before me. I picked up the pen, my fingers gliding lightly across the paper, signing my name in smooth, decisive strokes. My assistant, standing beside me, her eyes sparkling as she looked at me, said softly, Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes. From now on, Cole Corp has a new owner. Her voice carried pride, as though she was witnessing a brand new beginning, and I answered with a smile, nodding, a sense of freedom spreading through my chest, like a fresh breeze after a long storm. I rose, walked to the small bar in the office, poured a glass of golden champagne, bubbles rising gently, like distant memories dissolving, then stepped toward the window on the 50th floor, where the whole city of Seattle stretched out beneath me, its lights beginning to glitter under the sunset, like a man-made sea of stars whispering blessings. I took a sip, the sweet tart taste lingering on my tongue, leaned against the cold glass frame, and looked down at the rushing crowd below, the cars sliding past like the flow of time, the towering buildings like milestones long gone. I remembered what I had endured, the long, painful nights in the hospital, Hannah's mad laughter through prison glass, Christopher's pleading eyes beneath falling snow, and the mornings I woke with heavy loneliness. But now, all of it was nothing more than faint images, replaying gently in my mind as reminders that I had overcome, that I had found freedom in letting go. Life is still long. The days ahead will be brighter, not because of the glow of power or revenge, but because of quiet moments like this, knowing I am truly free. If Olivia's journey of healing brought you a sense of peace, hit like and comment to share the moment that touched you most. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next inspiring stories.